Welcome to the Money Mindful podcast, where money mindset and life coach Meaghan Jean Smith, hey, that's me, teaches you how to transform your relationship to money and achieve your life goals so you can live a glorious, magnificent, delicious, awesome life and love being you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Money Mindful podcast. This is your host, Meaghan Jean Smith. Alrighty, I got some questions for you today. This episode is for you if you, let me ask, are you not going for your big, juicy goals because it simply feels too big? Right? Like it's too big of a change and you can't quite connect with how you could possibly make such a huge transition in your life. For example, a career change, right? Like, are you afraid to change because you don't want to let go of the money that you currently have or the stability that you have in your role in whatever it is that you're currently doing? This is a really common obstacle that women face when they have really big dreams, right? When you have a good life, it can be extremely scary to let go of that, to pursue something different and new that is full of unknowns. Even though it feels like such a wonderful dream that you would love to create, for example, creating a new business or making a huge jump in your career or retiring and setting yourself up in a way that you'd always dreamed about, right? But it can be too big of a leap sometimes from where you are right now. And when it is such a big leap, what can happen is we can freeze up, right? Like our nervous system shuts down because all the change is too overwhelming and the goal puts us just way too far out of our comfort zone. If this is you, I have got you this episode, okay? Because there is a solution and that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. I want to give you some simple steps that you can implement so reaching your big, scary goals becomes attainable. And I'm super excited because today I have my friend and colleague and also former client on to tell her story of a huge goal that she went after and made a big life transition. And she did this very successfully. And she did it in a way that was very much in alignment with her whole life. So I'm thrilled to have Dr. Hope Seidel on the show today. Welcome, Hope.
Thank you for having me. I thought you were going to say, have you ever tried to do a big career change? Let me introduce you to my crazy client who made it all happen that way. So no, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so I'm just going to officially introduce you, but I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself, Hope. So Hope she's a mum, single mum, I might add. I feel like that's actually important to say. I know you don't sort of introduce yourself like that, Hope, but I feel like we need to give some props for that. And she's a pediatrician and a certified parenting coach, and she's a passionate advocate for children's wellness. And I think I'm going to stop there because I want to give you a chance, Hope, to sort of unfold your story. But basically, Hope is a parenting expert because she's got years of experience being a pediatrician and is now a parenting coach. But she's not actually on here today to talk about parent coaching. But don't worry if your ears just flared up and went, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I need. We'll make sure all Hope's details are in the show notes of the podcast. But Hope, do you want to just introduce yourself? How would you introduce yourself? How do you tell people what you do?
I mean, that's really close. I have never wanted to be anything but a doctor, and I have really fulfilled that dream in a way that has felt really incredible over the last 22 years. Yes, I'm a single parent. I have 2 adult children. My daughter is 23 and my son will be 21 in a couple of months. And I also have a private business where I coach parents one-on-one to sort of help them feel more confident in their parenting, more connected with their kids, to better understand why parenting is tricky for them. And that career shift was really born from the parts of my pediatric practice that I really found the most compelling, and that I really felt I was best at. So yeah, so that's pretty much me. Yeah. I mean, I'm thrilled to be here for sure.
Okay, so the aim today, Hope, what I would really like the listeners to walk away with is that I want them to really understand deep in their bones, not just on an intellectual level, that going for your really big, dreamy goals is possible. And it's possible because you don't actually have to do it how you've seen everybody else do it, right? Like you don't have to make a huge life change, create a business in 5 minutes and earn six figures and do it all in 6 months, right? Like you can actually plan out strategically simple steps one at a time that you can progress through, because you were working as a pediatrician, as a partner in a clinic. You correct me, please, if I get the details wrong.
No, that's right. That's right.
So you're a partner in a big clinic, you're very stable, have a huge client load, very successful. And I would say at the other end of your career, right? Like you've been around for a long time, you're mentoring people and have lots of people working in your clinic. And then to suddenly decide, actually, I want to be a parenting coach and support parents in a different way. Although that might sound like a simple thing, that's actually a freaking bold move, right? Like to start a new business, something completely different. And I imagine that a lot of your friends and family were like, Hope, what the heck are you doing? Why would you even consider doing that when it's so risky, right?
Yes, I will say that more of them didn't comment that, but my guess would be is that a number of people were thinking it for sure. But yes, I mean, I was in a thriving practice that I was super proud of, that I helped build, and I owned three different offices, and had a really terrific patient panel of patients that I loved. I think what really happened for me, well, there's probably a number of reasons why I made this shift, but from a fundamental level, I was really spending a lot of time paying attention to illness and disease. And what I really felt like I was more called to support parents with, and frankly, what I'm quite good at doing, is cultivating wellness, which really, in my opinion, starts in our homes. And so I felt like my career wasn't really giving me either the time opportunity or the financial opportunity to take the time I really needed with my patients. And I really noticed in my work, I was paying attention to what was impactful, both for me and, of course, for my patients. And I kept wanting more time for the things that were promoting wellness, and feeling less satisfied with my interactions with my patients that were committed to illness, or they were going to urgent cares. I don't know what they do where you are, but they were seeking things outside of the providers outside of the medical home to really get some of their medical care. And so yeah, I'm sure people have a lot of opinions about what I chose to do. But that's sort of how that evolved, is just this longing I had to connect with my patients in a different way that my office really didn't allow.
Okay, so you decide that you want to be able to support your parents, the parents in a different way, like support the kids in a different way through the parents.
Mm-hmm.
What were your biggest fears and concerns when you started to think about, hey, I might stop being a pediatrician, and well, I guess you don't stop being a pediatrician, but I might stop practicing in the clinic as a pediatrician and actually support these kids in a different way by coaching their parents. Talk me through the processes like that were going on in your brain about, oh my gosh, can you do this? Like, what were the real fears and concerns that you had?
Well, my first one was a lot of self-judgment, right? Because I really never wanted to be anything but a doctor, as I alluded to earlier. And it wasn't an easy path for me. And so I always have had a mad respect for the opportunity, the invitation that I was given to sort of be in this very vulnerable, precious space with patients. And I, to be perfectly honest, have spent time in my life judging others for leaving the career in a way that, you know, in my opinion at the time, really didn't honor the gift that they were given. And so I had a lot of self-judgment about leaving for some time, right? That wasn't just something I just didn't do, because that would mean that I wasn't grateful or committed. And then, as you mentioned, I'm a single parent, and although medicine does provide it's lucrative, it's not, it's also very stable for most of us, not including the pandemic, which of course, for any of your listeners who are physicians know the pandemic changed the rules a little bit for that, for many of us, but it's a very stable, predictable career. In the United States, if a patient has insurance, or even if they don't, we can really count on some typical salary that allowed me to give my children the stability that they needed during a time when they may not have felt really 100% stable. And so I was really afraid financially of what that risk might mean. And I'll be honest, I still have some of that, which we can talk about later, but it was a financial risk for me, for sure. That's just a way to think about it. Of course, it could be true that the riskiest thing I could do was not to take on this career, but at the time that felt very true to me, that I was giving up a salary that was very predictable, and that I knew exactly how to do, right? This is a completely new skill set as an entrepreneur, things that I really had never tackled before. I don't really have to solicit patients. They ask their neighbors who's a good pediatrician, and then they like me or they don't, but our skill sets that we're building as entrepreneurs, as is just a completely different skill set. And so I also was growing in a way that was both uncomfortable and also not familiar to me, which is not a place I've been in the last 20 years. There's very few things at this point in my medical career that I haven't seen.
All right. So I'm so glad you brought up the financial risk, because this, I think, is a huge block for people. I've had people come on calls with me before who are interested in working with me, and they want to make a big career change. And what has become apparent on the call is that they're actually just not ready. They can't even it's like their mind is like, oh, that would be so cool if I could create a business. But every cell in their body and their mindset is saying, danger, danger, no way. We could never possibly do that, because, they currently earn X amount of dollars, whatever that is. And then they feel like they couldn't possibly give that up to create something new, right? Because there's just too many unknowns. And I know, I'm in a privy position with you where, I've coached you. And so I know that was a big obstacle for you. So would you mind if we talk about that and share like the strategies that we came up with and how we actually manage that?
Not at all. Not at all. It may be worth it too to remember the month I took off as well as part of that conversation, if you remember that too.
Oh, that's right.
Remember? Yeah.
Yeah. Would you want to share about that?
Yeah. So one of the things that has been, listen, you have just a gorgeous way of seeing like a different lens for me. And I had surgery before I retired. I was working with you, and I had surgery where I had to take an entire month off of work, which I had never done in all of the years that I've ever been a human being. And I was very stressed out at that time. We really tackled some of those financial limiting beliefs at that time, if you remember, because I was thinking like, I can't not work for a whole month. What will happen? And I remember you said something very simple to me, like, don't you have any savings? I was like, yes, of course I have savings. And you said, isn't that what the savings are for? Right. And so just reframing my understanding of the work I've already done to take care of myself financially, ways in which I've already set myself up for success with savings that I don't know what I think I was saving them for, has buoyed my insecurities or my overwhelm or my worry when it does come up in this next chapter. So anyway, that was one piece that really helped me as I sort of let my pediatric career, as I retired from my pediatric career.
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to, I'm just going to lay some stuff out specifically because I really want the listeners' hope to, to not like, I'm not going over your example because I think that's exactly what they have to do. But I want to really pull apart the examples of what we did for you financially so that they can see, oh, okay, maybe I could do that. So, I remember when you first started talking about moving into operating a coaching business, one of the things that came up was it's like, well, how on earth am I going to replace my income from the clinic with income from being a parenting coach? And I think at the time, I don't remember the exact time frame, but it was kind of like if you stopped doing the clinic today and started being a parent coach tomorrow. I mean, I know it wasn't like that exactly. There's no way that you could make the same kind of money, which I agree. I mean,
We just did the math. It was like, it was math.
And so then we worked out there was a few different things we did, if you recall. And the first was, well, what money do you actually need, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are your financial commitments? Like, how much money do you actually need? And then also, what things, financial things, did you want to have covered and set up before you embarked on the quote, riskier, unquote, avenue of creating a business.
I can speak to that. Yes.
Yeah.
So when we look, yes, we broke it down in a very practical way, which as a scientist is kind of the way my mind works. Like, what is the actual numbers that I need in order to stay in my home, for example, if that's what my choice was, pay my bills. I actually did, outside of our work together, a full budget to find out like how much I actually needed to make in my coaching business in order to feel comfortable, for sure. And that was extremely helpful. And then we talked a little bit about what I would need to save for some very big things that I really wanted to feel comfortable with. For example, my son was going to college, and because of my circumstances, I still had some money that I wanted to save ahead of time before he went, so I wouldn't be trying to figure out how to pay for college on the fly. I wanted to have all that money ahead of time. And so because we slowed down my process, which I know, you alluded to already, I was able to really take the last year of my business and use the budget that I had committed to as a guide for how I wanted to live, and then save the extra money that I was having in my current career to sort of build up my reserves so that I feel like now I don't have any concern that I can't pay for college, regardless of how my business is doing as it's growing. I'm not concerned about that at all. Is that what you were thinking as well?
Yeah, 100%. And also, I just want to highlight, because I've worked with people before who, they're so ready to jump, right? Like they want to start a business and they're in a career, like a corporate career, for instance, that they're unhappy in. However, the jump is too big, right? Like they're jumping to start a business. They've never run a business before. So there's the finances that you want, one, to back yourself up so you have some lead time in building your business. And then two, I think a big step that people miss is if you are about to embark on running a business, no matter what business it is, whether it's brick and mortar or something online, you are for sure going to have to learn some business skills.
100%. And I was fortunate enough because I ran my pediatric business, but I will tell you that I was comfortable with some concepts, but a lot of it did not translate. And I actually started my coaching business while I was full-time in my practice intentionally. I made my website and I figured out how to do a number of things that I think I have the time for now, but really might have emotionally made me feel like I wasn't ready, or that there was some urgency to doing it. I just sort of tied up all those loose ends. I may improve them or change them as I finish, but I had a lot of things tied up before I even left my practice. And then, as you know, I went down to 2 days a week for an entire year right? We talked about, I remember I was thinking of leaving in July of the year I did retire, which ended up being in December. And I remember you saying, like, what is July? Like, why is that even a thing? Why do we need to be in a rush for that? Like, is there an urgency? And all of a sudden, it just opened up this possibility to me, like, I don't know why I'm in such a rush. It doesn't feel good to me to really be rushing this process. I know where I want to go. And how can I do this in a way that feels really comfortable? And that involved slowing down over time and building up my business at the same time, which really felt very much in alignment with kind of how I show up in the world.
Yeah. So I'm really going to break that down now just to lay that out. It's like, so first of all, it was the finance. So that was one of the biggest obstacles. So sorting the finance out and working out the exact numbers and then working out the time frame. I mean, you knew how much money approximately you made every month. And so there was a clear time frame of how much time you needed to put away that money for your son's college fees and to get yourself organized to make sure you had enough savings set up that you felt satisfactory with. Like I'm going to say X savings because it would be different for every person, right? And then on top of that, it's the business side of things that then you also gave yourself time to build up, actually getting all those foundational things in. I mean, look, you can bootstrap a business. You can start a business today without a website or anything like that. And there are some people who are completely wired for that. But I know, because I know you, Hope, that you're very similar to me in many ways, is that is like a hell no. For us, we're just like, no way. We're not bootstrapping anything. We are planning stuff out in a sensible, calm, and structured way. And so you got all that stuff sorted out, your website and ways for people to book with you, booking systems, all that kind of thing. And then we kind of skipped over it quickly, but you made a very structured exit plan from your career that gave you plenty of time to make a really calm transition from working full-time in the clinic, and you were busy, right? I mean, really heavy workload to then, I think you worked full-time for a period of time where you organized with the clinic that this was coming, your retirement was coming. And then I believe, Hope, it was you worked for another year part-time. Is that correct?
Yeah, I worked full-time. I started my business in 2020. I worked that entire year and a half almost. I did both. I wasn't taking tons of clients just because I was so slammed in my office, but I was certainly building a client base. And then I told my partners about my retirement, and then we made a decision collectively that I would stay 2 days a week, which was part-time in my office for an entire year. And that allowed me some more time to get used to the new schedule of not having as overwhelming workload that I was having in my at the clinic, and then also to start to build my business in a different way when I had a little bit more free time. So yes, I did an entire 2 years. And I want to just comment, if I could, about what you said earlier about some people are wired to do it differently. It's not lost on me that I'm always talking to parents about how they need to spend more time looking at what they value and paying attention to what's important to their own compass instead of comparing themselves to other parents, because that's just the worst plan when you're trying to decide if what you're doing is right or not. And when we reflected together, it was just very obvious to me that I was using other people's timelines, other people's stories against myself, thinking that there was some rush or that there was a way to do in entrepreneurship or leaving your job that may have felt perfectly wonderful to those people, but really felt bad to me, and using that against myself. So I just didn't want to forget to repeat that, because I think that's really probably very common with a lot of your listeners.
100%. And I'm just going to reiterate that, you took a good 2 years to transition from your job to now working full-time as a parenting coach. And, I just think that is so sensible. And for you, right? Like for you, that was just such a sensible move. And for other people, that timeline might be 6 months. It might be 12 months. It might be 5 years, right? Like truly, that I'm working with another client who is in the corporate world. She's very high up, and I can't remember where she's at now, but at the time when we were talking about her transitioning into another business, I think she was about 4 years out from retirement. And we've really explored it in a big way about that. Well, that's like doing a university degree here in Australia. And I said, would you be willing to do a university degree to get to the stage where you could have the skills to build a business, right? Like, would you be willing to invest 4 years? And she was like, yeah, 100%. And, and again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you can't take risky moves or you can't go all in. For some people, that really is the path, right? But for others, and like this other client of mine, when she really started like looking at all the different aspects of her life and everything, financial, lifestyle, all the things, she realized, hang on a minute, I think I'm okay with doing these 4 years. Like, I don't need to be in a rush, and I'm going to be in such a better financial position if I give it that amount of time. And then we worked together for a few years, and it got to a point where she was like, actually, I could get the early retirement type thing. And, like, I think sometimes we're in such a rush to get to the destination that we forget, we don't see, not forget, but it's like we don't see the opportunities that are literally just like lying in front of us. Like for you, it was, there's lots of people who aren't in this position, but for you, you were able to work part-time. You were able to build a client base. I mean, it was ideal. You were already working with parents,
Yeah.
like you already had this whole audience, if you will, of parents and people who trusted you in the community. And then you had a whole 2 years to let everybody know, hey, I can support you in another way, and really open up the door to create a stable foundation for your business.
Yeah.
And I just think that's, a beautiful thing that you realize
Well, and
that.
absolutely. And, and I had the luxury of pivoting my career to something that was very aligned with my other career. So everybody might not have that same luxury. Like some people are going to do a store or start coaching something different than what they do day to day. But for me, it also, because I was really moving towards becoming the person that was a parenting coach, I also could practice some of the beliefs and skills that I wanted to use in my business with my current patients who were already a welcome audience and really in a place where I could do classes and figure out what felt good and what messages I was giving were received. I could get feedback in real time. So I also felt really fortunate that I could use the job that I had to really help develop my self-concept, and my confidence.
Yeah. Self-concept. Let's talk about that, because how many years have you been working as a pediatrician?
Well, I would have been 22 this July, and then of course I was in residency for 4 years before that. So, yeah, a while.
Okay. So 22 years, that's a pretty solid amount of time to really identify as, hey, I'm a pediatrician. Like, I am
Yeah.
a doctor. This is what I do. And we haven't really touched on this, Hope, like the internal stuff. Do you want to speak to that, about how it's not just about the mechanics, like the actions that you take to establish a business? I mean, like, I knew this from day dot that you were perfectly capable of doing that. I mean, if you're capable of being partner in a clinic and, getting through medical school, there was no doubt in my mind that you could build a business. Absolutely not, right? However, the inner work that you had to do, that's another story. Like, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, speaking to my comments earlier about really always wanting to be a physician, I wouldn't say I'm the kind of person where what I do is who I am necessarily, but I do have a lot of pride in the work and commitment it took for me to get to where I wanted to be as a physician, like anybody who's happy with their career choice probably is. But I'm still getting used to introducing myself not as a physician. It happened today, actually, and instead as a parenting coach. Like, that is so familiar with my identity, and sometimes again, it's lucky for me because I don't really have to choose. Part of what draws many of my clients to me is that I am a pediatrician. They really see that connection in a meaningful way. So I don't have to give that identity up, but I really am working towards becoming someone who has the same sense of herself as a parenting coach. And I think that I'm giving myself some time to get to know that new person. I'm not putting too much pressure on myself to, I'm proud of the person that brought me to this place. I love the person that was a pediatrician. So many of the moments that I had in my last career have made this part of my life possible. And so I don't really want to let her go, but I also recognize that building a new identity in this way is necessary, and it still feels, frankly, a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah. So, Hope, do you want to speak to how coaching helps with that? Because we haven't really talked about that at all. Like, I mean, how was the coaching a part of this process?
You mean how is the coaching a part of the process of developing this new sense of new identity?
Yeah, and or the goal.
Well, I'll be interested in what you think about that answer. But for me, our work together has, I have a lot of thoughts about what it means to be a good physician. I have a lot of thoughts about what it means to be a committed doctor. I have a lot of thoughts on what people are going to think about being a coach compared to being a physician, and the value of that holds in society. You and I trained in this same place, and I'm also certified as a life coach. And there's a lot of people who don't, that's not a credentialed field in the same way that medicine is. There are a lot of people that have thoughts about that. So managing my mind and really committing to this idea. Well, first of all, taking accountability for the thoughts that I had about negative and positive thoughts about where I was and where I was going, and then really trying to commit to this new sense of myself, recognizing that I get to choose how I think about this part of my career, just like I do any other part of my life. And so we've worked a lot on sort of developing a new self-concept in that way that generates feelings of pride and power and gosh, I can't even think of any other perfect emotions, but ones that don't set me up for doubt and judgment and worry.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like the hidden work.
Yes.
That does, you don't see on the outside.
Well, it's the part that really helps you. I mean, confidence simply just comes from a belief that you're capable of doing something, right? And even though this isn't necessarily what we teach our clients all the time, sometimes looking backwards in your past to see places where you really have demonstrated the kind of mental work required to achieve a goal can help bolster this new place in your life where things may seem completely overwhelming. For example, I'm not an athlete, but I ran a marathon at one point about 8-9 years ago. And I have really no business running a marathon, but I just decided I was going to do that. I decided I was going to be a runner. I made a thought shift that I was someone who was becoming a runner. And I really just kept running. Just spoiler alert, running is not necessarily a skill if you just want to get from A to B. You just got to keep running more and more. You know that. And so when I could look back and see places where I'd really committed to this new identity and that success was possible for me, the same was frankly true when I went to medical school. It really helped me see that I'd already used that skill in other places and I just needed to transfer it into this one. And I use that mindset a lot right now when doubt creeps in or when I'm feeling uncomfortable.
Yes. Yes. So good. So there's definitely mindset work that you can do when you're going after new goals. But I also want to talk about something really strategic that anyone can do that we haven't touched on yet is that, I remember that when you were really in the throes of when the self-doubt was coming up, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die sort of thing. Everybody does it. We all do it. Can't possibly make this change in my life.
Thanks for the reminder. Thank you for the reminder.
But then we went to worst case scenario, right? Like we looked at, well, if your coaching business is a complete flop and, you're not getting clients and you're not making money, what will you actually do?
Yeah, and we did.
We made a plan for you because, straight up, you could just work as a doctor, like do locum work. I don't know if it's called locum in the States, but
It
like,
is.
yeah. Uh, and so do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I think that is like a golden nugget, when you're going for your goals. Like, I think the whole thing, don't have a plan B, is bullshit. It's like, no, have a plan B, have a worst case scenario. So to give yourself some space, like some breathing room, like to let your brain be like, it's all right. Like, if this doesn't work out, I know exactly what I'm going to do.
Yeah, it's probably a slippery slope for some clients. Like sometimes that out can feel, I think, can accidentally make you feel less committed to your goal if you're not careful. But for me, it felt very aligned because the risk felt lower when I'm pretty risk averse as a person. It's why not a surgeon and I'm a pediatrician. Like I don't want to be you don't want me saving your life. Really, you do not. Like I just really am I'm thoughtful. And so you were so careful to understand the way I see the world. And so that particular strategy was extremely helpful for me. And another thing that I feel like we talked about together, but I came away from our work together with, so I don't know if it was in my brain or yours, but that I was taking my brain with me, right? Is a thought that I carry even now. It's like the brain that I had that got me into medical school is the same brain that made me successful as a pediatrician. And it's the same brain that's going to carry me in my next career. And that is a constant. And so sometimes thinking about like, what is the constant that is coming with you, as opposed to, because there's so much newness as in a new career change. There's so much newness as an entrepreneur. Like, what can I trust? And I work really hard on trusting me. That's a skill that I've been working on with you, and just in general, just knowing I'm going to know when it's right, when it's not. And as you work to build that, then you have your back regardless of what happens, which I think is some of the work we were talking about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That self-trust is huge. And
Yeah.
I think one of the most important points, because if you do have your own back and you do trust yourself, you will be able to make decisions and actually move forward. It's when we lack that self-trust that then everything becomes unstable because you can't trust the decisions you're making.
100%. And you can also trust that you'll know when it's not right. Like when I left my marriage, I was in a very destructive marriage, and I just knew that I was going to know when I was done, right? And sometimes self-trust can look like, you know what, I thought this was the right decision, and I learned a lot. It's really about valuing the process, right? Who you're becoming in that shift. And sometimes who you're becoming maybe isn't the new career that you have. Maybe you want to go back or try something else. It doesn't have to be a problem. But I think self-trust helps propel you and also can give you clarity on what the right decision is, even if it's not doing something.
Yes, yes. All right, Hope. I want to just get a couple more questions in before we finish up.
Yeah.
First of all, like now in hindsight that you are now working full time as a parenting coach, if you look back on the process that you took to get to this stage, is there anything that you would do differently?
I was thinking about, we talked about this at some point. Not really. I feel like we were so thoughtful together about how to create a safe space for me to make this transition, but by the time I left, I was ready. Like I haven't spent one day wishing I was back in the clinic now. The work that we did ahead of time was so in alignment with who I wanted to be that I feel I don't have a lot of regret. I will say that, just from a practical standpoint, that may not translate to any of your listeners. Like, I wish I would have spent more time creating a schedule for my days that are more open now when I had 2 days a week in the office, because, I'm so used to fitting my life into my work because I've been working so hard for the last 20 years that, starting my coaching business just affords me kind of this amazing opportunity to just choose when I want to work. And that is way more uncomfortable for me than I thought it would be. And so I wish I would have worked harder to sort of prepare myself for that during that time. That may not be something any of your listeners have to deal with, but it has been very true for me. That's probably the biggest obstacle I'm dealing with now.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh. I relate to that so much because freedom has its own cons.
Yes.
Exactly that. Suddenly it's actually easier when somebody tells you what to do. Like somebody tells you what to do and you do it. And we can get caught in the trap of, I want freedom. I want freedom. Well, guess what? When you get freedom,
Yes.
you are the author of that. You're the narrator, you're the one who's got to make all the decisions, and there's no one to fall back on. And that
That's it.
takes courage.
Yes. Yeah. It's just like, and you're the only one that you can blame when you waste your time. So, it's just a totally, I mean, the whole point, listen, I'm a growth mindset kind of person. I mean, the discomfort is for me, I invite and welcome, but it has been so uncomfortable for me to have so much time. Today, I had an enormous amount of time. And, I can get to the end of the day and think like, what did I do today? Because I was deciding my success and how hard I worked as a metric for being a successful human being. And so I'm just redefining I think probably just being prepared to redefine what success looks like, to redefine kind of your self-concept. That's part of that as well. But I feel really good about how we work together, and to sort of create safety for me. I don't have a lot of regrets about the way things unfolded. I think if I had left in July, I would have not felt ready. And so I'm really, really grateful that I took the time that I needed. And I think it's wise for your listeners to contemplate if that might be good for them too.
Yeah. So I think the safety point is something to highlight because that is, I mean, I'm just going to break down, like basically in summary, what we did was step one was identify the goal. Right. So what is it that you want to do? And then step two is that we identified all the challenges and obstacles that were in the way of you achieving that goal. And one of those, I mean, when it comes to challenges and obstacles, there's external challenges, like actual practical stuff that we've gone over, like the finance, the time frame, building the business skills, building up your practice, getting your website sorted, all that
Saving money.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then there's the internal stuff, which was, you actually being able to create safety to make this big jump. And, I want to highlight that because I think that that's something that a lot of people don't realize. And so then they end up feeling, like a loser or they're not good enough or whatever. But actually what's happening is that they're making a huge shift in their life. And on a cellular level, if you will, their body isn't quite ready for that big jump. But their mind, like their intellect is saying, well, come on, like lots of people start a business. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, let's do this sort of thing. But the body is like, wait, we're going to die. This is too new and different. And we haven't had a chance to catch up and get with the program. And so we're going to hold you back because we're not confident that everything's going to work out. Right. Like, I hope that analogy makes sense. So, part of this goal creating strategy is, set the goal, identify the obstacles, and then solve for those obstacles one at a time, internal and external, and then watch your goal create, right? Like that's how you achieve the goal. So just my final question to you, Hope, is what advice would you give to the beautiful woman who's listening to this episode today who has a big goal that they want to do that's going to completely transform their life and they are shit scared right now? What advice do you want to give them?
I just let go of the idea that I needed to leave the fear behind or that I needed to solve for the fear. You have to bring the fear with you. It's not a problem at all. And the truth is that I also think it's valuable when your brain wants to offer all these truths, like something like, it's so much easier to stay where I am. It's so much safer to stay where I am. Just to really question, is it? Like, what would it cost you to stay where you are? And when you're balancing that, like for me, staying in my career was really exhausting. My health was taking a toll. I wasn't emotionally satisfied. My patients were suffering because I was exhausted after the pandemic. There were a lot of places where I wasn't showing up as a physician in the way my patients deserved. And there was a cost to me staying too. And so to me, like when we're weighing the cost, if we're waiting for fear to go away, that's just a waste of time. Like that's just coming. There's a cost either way, and I'm still afraid. And I don't make that a problem. I just say, hey, let's just keep going. And so I think if you're waiting to feel comfortable, just don't.
Oh, what a great note to end on. I'm so glad you brought that up. And that's Hope a whole podcast, another podcast episode we could do, I think, just on that topic. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story on the show. And before you go, I just want to tell everybody that we haven't really touched on this much at all, but Hope is an incredible parenting coach. I receive her parenting emails every week, and every week I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm telling Louie about it. You know, like I get so much just from your emails, Hope. And I also know that she is in demand and that she will change your parenting life. And she's coached some pretty big names that I'm not allowed to say, if I do say so myself. So she's coaching the celebrities, guys. So, but that doesn't mean she's not accessible to you. Hope, tell everyone where they can find you, because all the parents listening right now need to get some of your magic in their life.
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I hold, I have a great deal of respect for you as well. And a lot of the growth that I've had, I can thank you for. So, but so anybody can find me on my website at www.parentwithhope.com. And I also am on Instagram often, just saying whatever's on my mind at the time. And you can find me on Instagram at Parent with Hope, or you can find me on Facebook at the same name, Parent with Hope. And if you get on my website, there's an easy way to contact me, and you can get on my email list so that you can get some Monday wisdom or entertaining stories if you wish. But yes, I'm still taking clients. I coach parents one-on-one, and until I'm overwhelmed, I'm going to keep going. I really absolutely love it. I love supporting parents, and I really am hoping I'm going to raise a generation of parents that feel just so much more confident than parents currently do. It's a really, really challenging time to be a parent, and a kid for that matter. So thanks so much for having me, my friend.
You are welcome. All right. And if you didn't catch, thank you, Hope. Thank you. Well, thank you for being on the show. And if you didn't catch all those details that Hope just gave out, don't you worry, because on the show notes page on my website, I will make sure there is links to everywhere that you can find Hope, because she is incredible. And if you are looking for stability and clarity to create your goals in a way like Hope has done, and you want support to achieve them, I can help you. So I help you in a one-to-one capacity, get really clear on your goals, and then I support you with the strategy and mindset to overcome any obstacles that are blocking you from achieving what you want, so you can create those awesome dreams of yours and live your best life. So if you're interested in working with me, you can go to my website and book a call to meet me to get the ball rolling. And if you're hanging out with me on social media, there's links directly to book programs. So don't be shy. Reach out. All right. Until I see you again, well, not see you. What am I talking about? Until I get in your ears again next time, have an amazing week. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Money Mindful podcast. For future episodes, be sure to subscribe. Ready to take the next steps? Creating your money and life goals can be super challenging if you don't have a process to follow. Get my free course that will help you get unstuck, clarify your goals, and get you going. For more info, go to meaghanjsmith.au.